Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and today we are getting into parenting and mentorship, as well as teaching. Sometimes, as parents, um, our children experience difficulties, and we are called to step up and be a teacher at home and help our child navigate difficulties in life. One of those is dyslexia, which we'll be talking about today. We have the dyslexia professor himself here to help us with resources that make navigating this often unexpected challenge a lot easier. It can be a frustrating field, as we'll get into today, when your child is struggling to learn to read. It's not just about the academic struggles, but also the social struggles of fitting in and, keeping up with the peers. And we're going to get into all the mental health aspects today as well. So, Mr. Russell Van Brocklen, great to have you here. And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me. My journey with dyslexia, the most interesting chapter was when, in the late 90s, when I was in college, I wanted to know how the laws were created, how it worked, not some theory I wanted to know. So I signed up for the New York State Assembly internship program. And I showed up and I said, well, here's my neuropsychological evaluation. I have a first grade reading and writing level. And they looked to me and said, this isn't going to work. So they got a committee together and they really said, how are we going to make this work how are we going to accommodate them? It was
Hmm.
exceedingly extensive. They said, we're placing you in the Majority Leaders Program and Counsel's office that operated the assembly day to day because there are three administrative assistants who could help me with my horrendous writing. Turned out very well. And then for the academic portion, you had to do a major research paper. My standard accommodation back then was just to give a very long and detailed oral defense. And it was so involved that other students wanted nothing to do with it. They found writing a lot easier. So I did that, and they recommended 15 credits of A minus. Well, the political science department at the State University of New York Center at Buffalo looked at the accommodations and said, we don't like these accommodations. So the only time in the history of that program, it happened 27 years ago, is that they said, well, instead of 15 credits of A minus, we don't like your accommodations. Here's your 15 credits of F.
Mm.
Okay. Now, it decimated my GPA. And I said, no more. I'm tired of this discrimination. I wanted to solve reading and writing for dyslexics. And I talked to my professor. I said, where could I go in grad school that would force me to do this? And they kind of laughed. They said, law school. They didn't think
Yeah.
I was serious. I was serious. So I went to work with Professor Warner, and it was the second day of contracts. I'm auditing, so I'm not getting credit. I'm just there to learn to read and write. He calls on me, and using the Socratic method, if you don't know the answer, which almost nobody does the second day of law school, they keep asking you questions to really just to embarrass the living heck out of you.
Mm.
All right, that's how it's done. If you're interested, there's a famous movie called The Paper Chase from the '70s that demonstrate that. Well, that didn't happen to me. What I found later is for dyslexics in our speciality, our area of extreme interest and ability, when that's grad school. When we walk in, we own the place day one. So he called on me and everything changed. Everything just lined up and my thoughts were organized for the first time ever. I started responding very heavily back to him. Then I started shouting at him, and he started shouting at me. I leaned forward to yell at him as rapidly as I could get my arguments out. He did the same to me. Apparently, this is acceptable in law school. Well, that ferocious exchange went back and forth for 15 minutes. And at the end, Professor Warner said, Russell, I have to stop. You couldn't be any more correct. In the interest of time, I have to move on to the next case.
Mm.
My classmates looked at me with a sense of kind of trepidation and awe because the ones I've kept in contact with, they said, we've been practicing for years and we still can't do that, not to a law professor. So at so that kind of just cleared everything in my head. I solved reading within a month. I solved writing within a couple of years. And then what I wanted to do was to just go back to seniors, juniors, and seniors in high schools, the students who are like me, highly motivated, highly intelligent, and just solve it. I said, I wanted the New York State government to fund my program. And my professor said, they can't even get the state government to fund their research. Well, I got them to do it after a number of years. What happened? Remember, we cherry picked these kids, highly motivated, highly intelligent, the best teacher that they had to teach it. They were juniors and seniors in high school with a middle school writing skill. One class period a day for a 180-day school year, approximately. At the end, they scored in the average range of entering graduate school students, not college, graduate student, entering like the writing skills of a college graduate. They all graduated from college, GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6, no accommodations. They all got jobs. The best private school at the time was Landmark College. We were three times as effective for less than 1% of the cost for less than 1/25th of the effort. I presented in New York City in 2006. That was where I got started.
Now, before we get further, I want to take a big step back. For everyone listening, I'm sure they've heard of dyslexia before, but I want to do some myth busting and some, just getting everyone on the same page. So, can you break down for us what is dyslexia? How does it kind of play out in an individual's life, and what are the complications that follow with that?
Okay. So the first thing we need to do is go to the top science. For those who are watching, it's Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz from Yale, medical doctor, brain scans. For those listening, it's the second edition. I'm going to turn to Overcoming Dyslexia, second edition, page 78, figure 23. This is dyslexia. So do you see how the back of part of your brain has this massive neural activity and mine is next to nothing?
Right, right. I'm seeing that.
Okay. Now, do you see how the front part of the brain, I have about 2.5 times the neural activity?
Hmm.
Okay. Now, our brains are fundamentally different. So when you're dealing with a dyslexic, after I presented in New York City, I thought I did something amazing. I thought I was done. I was wrong. The teachers asked, what about typical students? Will this work for them? I said, absolutely not. So to answer your question, the first thing that I had to do is when I did my initial program, Yale said it's articulation followed by word analysis. I used the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment. Analytical, articulation. To me, that was essentially the same thing. Very successful. But with typical students, what I found is we had to flip it. We had to do word analysis first, then articulation. But before we do that, we're talking about average kids here. They're so frustrated, they don't want to do anything. So the
Right.
first thing I found is we have to focus on their speciality. We have to focus on their area of extreme interest and ability. And how do we determine that? It's a Saturday morning. They can do whatever they want. What is it? That's their speciality. Secondly, we had to teach them not from the general to the specific, the way they're taught in school, but from the specific to the general. Why? You ask a dyslectic, for example, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement? It's like asking us to grab fog. We can't do it. But if you ask a dyslectic in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So then we're going to say, what we're going to do is we're going to force your brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So what we do is we teach from the specific to the general. For example, what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? We go to his biography, we find out. And then another question will present itself. We answer that. Another question will present itself, and we answer that. And we keep going, and that forces our brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. And then we teach word analysis followed by articulation.
So I still want to go back. So you talked about the difference in neurological activity in the brain. So
Mhm.
how does that manifest? A lot of people hear dyslexia and they think, oh, it's just words rearrange themselves when people are trying to read. Like, how accurate is that statement? Like, how does it actually manifest when people are trying to learn and study who have dyslexia?
Okay, you're describing a symptom of dyslexia. And what I find what a lot of current scientists are trying to do is they're trying to focus on how do we fix the symptom, but
Mm,
they're not getting at the core issue. So it's kind of like somebody has a cold. We're going to take the cold pills to get rid of the stuffy nose. That's a symptom. The real problem is in your chest, and the doctor's still trying to figure out how do we deal with that. All right.
okay,
So
okay.
how do we deal with dyslexia? Let me give you an example. For most of your parents out there, let's say you have an elementary school child, what you're going to notice is their writing, as one teacher told me when I present in New York City every year, is my student, she's a special ed teacher, my students are writing apparently randomly placed misspelled words. I don't even know where to begin. So if you're super rich, you're going to use an Orton Gillingham multi-sensory structured language approach. Dr. Orton passed away in 1948. Gillingham sometime in the 50s. Hasn't changed a lot since. They use seeing, touching, hearing to overcome the issue. It's 4 to 5 students per teacher. And these schools generally run about 75,000 a year. And they need 4 to 5 years
Wow.
to generally fix the problem. Oh yeah. So if you're rich, you can
Yeah,
do that.
that's a lot.
Now, if you want to do it at home and not go through 2 years of training for $11,000, and that's at a non-for-profit after a bachelor's degree, here's how we do it at home. Are you ready?
Hmm.
Do you know any dyslexic elementary school kids like that?
No, not personally.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you the example that I use a lot. The
Sure.
girl's name is Sarah. She's extraordinarily dyslexic. She's 10 years old at the time, in fifth grade. We start off with 10 things the students like and 10 things they dislike. The favorite thing she has in the world is swimming. She's actually took a course where she's actually an assistant swim teacher. She's on the swim team. She gets in the pool every chance she can get. So what we do is we have the parents start off typing, not on an iPad, not on an iPhone, not handwriting, typing usually on a laptop. You're going to type out hero, plus sign, what are we talking about? And the child's going to copy it. Why is that okay? Copying default writing strategy, Professor James Collins, Strategies for Struggling Writers. So then we're going to switch out hero for Sarah. Sarah, plus sign, what are we talking about? We're going to switch out what are we talking about for the first thing on her list that she likes, swimming. Sarah, plus sign, swimming. See how we got there?
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, what we have to do is we have to swap out the plus sign for a word to make it a simple 3 sentence paragraph. Now, I'm going to ask you some of the most simplest questions you will ever be asked. If you answer them exactly, it'll work. If you don't, it's going to collapse.
All
Do you
right.
think I can fool you?
I suppose so.
Well, I fool most of the teachers. So do you think you can answer the questions exactly because they're going to be the simplest ones you're ever going to be asked?
I'll try my best.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, here's my question. Does Sarah like or dislike swimming?
Sarah likes swimming.
But that's not what I asked.
Right.
Kind of confused?
Does Sarah like or dislike swimming?
No, you didn't do what I asked.
Okay.
Are you ready for that aha moment?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What you did is what virtually every educated person did. I asked
Hmm.
does Sarah like or dislike.
Hmm.
You picked the correct word like, but it wasn't going to fit in the sentence. So you just added the S and you
Hmm.
made a correct sentence because you're educated. Sarah doesn't know how to add the S.
Interesting.
Okay. This is why this is such an expensive problem to fix. How do we get her to add the S? Well, if you're using
Hmm.
an Orton Gillingham multi-sensory structured language approach, it is complicated as all heck. College graduates, which was required before you get trained in that approach, take a very long time to learn how to solve this. And it takes a long time to work with the kids. You're seeing, touching, hearing, all this stuff.
Right.
I'm going to show you in the next few minutes how to do this really quickly. What we're going to do, because what Sarah would do, she's going to say like, because that's what I asked. Sarah likes swimming. How do we get her to add the S? I'd ask Sarah to read it out loud, and does it sound generally correct? That's a key thing. Read it out loud. Sarah, does that sound generally correct? No. Fix it. Sarah likes swimming. We practice that 20 times. The 10 likes and 10 dislikes. If she messes up on number 18, redo it until she gets them perfect. Okay. It's a lot of redoing the same thing over and over again.
Right, right,
Next, do you see how like and dislike is a form of word analysis?
right.
Okay. Then we're going to go because reason one. Give me a simple reason why Sarah likes swimming.
Because she likes to exercise.
Okay. Sarah likes swimming because she likes to exercise. Now, what do you have there? A whole bunch of misspelled words. How do we fix that? What we do is we tell Sarah before she puts the period down, she can ask any question. But
Mm,
she might ask, did I spell exercise wrong? She probably did. If the answer is yes, so you misspelled it. You type it out, she copies it. Okay. And then what you do is say, now she just has to do that one word if that's the only thing she made a mistake in. But kids don't do that normally. They drop the period. Once they drop the period, you tell them this beforehand. If there's a major, and I mean major grammatical mistake or any spelling mistake, they got to retype the entire sentence. Okay. What happens? They say, I'm not going to make that mistake. And they make it typically 3 to 13 times. As they progress, they're getting more and more annoyed with themselves. To help lower the stress level, you can say you made a silly mistake or silly error. Those are the two least offensive terms I ever found working with this. As they approach 5 or 6 retyping of them not making a mistake and they keep making it, they start getting really annoyed with themselves. So they start to hyper focus, and that's where the magic starts to happen. By 10 or 11, they're concentrating so deeply that sometimes you see sweat coming down their forehead. The concentration is immense. And then finally, they get it right. And you keep them doing that until they get it right for 20 times in a row, repeating the same thing over and over again. Then it's reason one and reason two. You glue them together, the glue word end. Then reason one, reason two, and reason three. Okay. Now, what I told you for a fifth grader, 10-year-old, might take 2, 3 weeks on the short end, maybe a month, month and a half on the longer end, typically. If they're in second grade, it'll take a semester. But what I just showed you takes a dyslexic student from kindergarten writing to end of second, beginning third grade level.
mm.
All right. And here's a little secret. People ask me, what do I do about reading? I said, I don't teach reading. Huh? I said, if you can write it, you can read it. You can write out the word, you can read it. Do you see how, again, I'm going back to the book, Overcoming Dyslexia. I'm showing the brain scan again. Back part, almost no neural activity. Yours is going crazy. Front part, mine 2.5 times overactive. It's word analysis followed by articulation. Like and dislike is a simple form of word analysis after because the reasons are articulation. Now, now you could do that, or you could go and, you know,
Spend all your money.
drop enough money to buy a BMW to have a private dyslexic school do it.
So I guess what I'm not tracking is, right, you asked, does Sarah like or dislike swimming, right? And you said most people will say likes or dislikes with the S. You said Sarah will not add the S. I guess why is she not adding the S? Is her brain just physically incapable of thinking in that way, or you had to develop it? Like, I guess I'm not understanding why she doesn't add the S herself. Like,
Okay. Because I'm just going to go back to the neuroscience,
right,
showing that you see the massive activity in that you have in the back of the brain.
right.
Let's look at the dyslectic. Let's look at that from, um, that we just don't have the brain activity.
Mm,
It's kind of like asking me, did you ever play any sports, competitive
right,
sports at
yes.
any time? What'd you play?
I was on a basketball team and then I did a lot of solo sports, so like cross country. So not a lot of competitive stuff. I did do swimming, so
But
besides that.
you played reasonably competitive basketball.
Sure, yeah, I mean to the middle school level, I suppose, but
Right, but you could
regular
go,
game of
okay,
basketball.
right. Now I want you to look at not just somebody who's just not meant for basketball. Let's say we're talking about somebody who,
Right.
I'm going to mention my cousin Timmy when he was that age. He has a genetic disorder. He's short, and
Mm,
he has a genetic order that made him very hefty. Okay, he's like 5'2" and weighed
Right.
like 280 pounds. How come Timmy couldn't be? And he's just like me. I'm horrible at basketball, so is he.
Right.
It's kind of like asking Timmy, how come you can't go and play competitive basketball? How come you're not dunking?
Yeah.
Body's not designed for it. The brain for a dyslexic is not designed for this. It is completely. It's kind of like when I go in, like for example, when I went into to do my original program, I had to get Dr. James Collins to sign off on it. It's $1.5 million research grant that he had before in this general area. People said it was going to take years. I did in less than 2 weeks. Why? There's a university-wide competition for 15,000. That's all the time I had. And I did get his written approval. He said A plus excellent. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't have gotten the 15,000. I would have never gotten the state funding because I'd run it through multiple schools. I could do that because I'm dyslexic. I could walk into law school and dominate it on the second day because that's the part of my brain that has 2.5 times the neural activity. But how come the kid can't do? Because it's just not how our brain is designed. So what I'm using is I found the parts of the brain that are overactive, and I said, how can we adapt things for this? Does that make sense?
Right, it does. I'm just scientifically curious. Is like I don't know how much research we have on dyslexia. Do we like understand why the brain is incapable of it? Is it just like the physical
Oh
structure
yes,
isn't there? Are they
we.
just dead cells? Like what is like the physical science
It,
behind it?
it is you're absolute. I'd get this and read it through. It gives you the front part.
Yeah.
Dr. Sally Shaywitz ideas on what to do with the research I disagree with. Why is it? It's an incredibly complicated question, and to be honest with you, um, I looked into that, but I'm more the guy who does the solution.
Right, right.
Okay. As far as the solution goes, let me just tell you what the difference is. How far did you go in your education?
Um, it was my educational history is kind of strange because I was a nuclear operator military, but it's
Hmm.
more than a college level education. So,
Yeah, you went out in high school, then you went into the Navy. You were on submarines?
yes, I did training on a
Okay.
submarine.
Yeah, and they only let the most, and just so your audience understands this, they don't let anybody on that submarine that's not checked out 7 ways to Sunday because they just can't take even the possibility of a mistake.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, you're dealing with the heart of the modern Navy. So, but what we're looking at here is when you're dyslectic, okay? When you're going through your K through 12 school. Do you remember an English class where they gave you all these books every year? You had to go through 5, 10, or
Oh
whatever the
yeah.
number
Yeah,
was?
of course.
Okay. Do you know how they taught you from the general to the specific mostly?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I want you to imagine you're a dyslexic. The most motivated kids I ever worked with. You step outside of that speciality, their motivation's down 50%.
Mm.
Typically, they're down 75, 80%. Next, we're looking at they don't teach from the general to the specific. I'm sorry, they teach from the general to the specific, and the dyslexics like grabbing fog. They can't do anything with it. And then they're certainly not doing word analysis followed by articulation. So let me show you how frustrating that is. Is there a sport that you're really horrible at? And I mean, you're just horrible. For me, it's basketball.
Um, I don't know. I would say, like you and I discussed off, Mike, I can't throw a football too well. So,
Okay, so I want you to imagine that you were told that your economic future is based on your ability to be an excellent football player. But we'll accommodate you. We'll give you $1,000 football. We will give you $10,000 protective equipment, and we'll make sure the people you're going against are getting the cheapest used garbage out of that was once sold at Walmart.
I get what
Is it
you're
really going
saying.
to
If I
matter,
still
or are
can't
you
play
just?
good, it's not going to matter. Yeah.
That's what's going on with dyslexia in school. So when we finally get to grad school, we walk in and they ask, in this very narrow area, can you contribute? What's your idea? It's all that matters. All the other stuff you're supposed to learn in a PhD program, nobody cares about that because if you weren't an exceptional student, you wouldn't be there anyway. It's the idea, it's the currency of the realm. And that's why it's like me asking, well, how come well, I got approval for my research within less than 2 weeks. I got funding from the university. I got funding from the state senate. Why can't you do it? Why can't you come up with something that's worth mattering to somebody who and a lot of them can't? It's just that's what it is. It's just our brains are so completely different. And the system is stacked against us. Now, this does not mean that dyslexics have to be in speciality forever. Let me give you an example. Last December, December 2024, and on the 27th, I was working with Kimberly. I have full permission to tell her story. She's just spent $700 to have her kids tested by the state thoroughly. She's the homeschooling mom. Her son Reed was in fifth grade, reading at he scored a 190 on their test, which is somewhere in the mid second grade level.
Okay.
For the rest of the school year, they expected him to increase by 2.8 points to a 192.8. Grade level was 211. I worked with Kimberly half an hour a week, and she worked with Reed, 3 half-hour sessions a week on average. She didn't get him to increase 2.8 points. He increased by 20 points.
Wow.
That's over three standard deviations. That's 1 in 2,000. He scored a 210, grade level's 211, essentially at grade level. Then his friends came to him and said, Reed, for social reasons, we want you to come with us to public school. So he and his brother, who's not dyslexic, both went to public school. Reed's doing fine. Okay. Now, but during the intervention period, we have to be in the kid's speciality. So the next thing people want to know is how do I deal with the reading aspect? So I'm going to give you an example of the speciality and how to deal with the reading. I'm holding up a book called Walt Disney, The Triumph of the American Imagination. This is by far the most popular book that I teach when I do this privately. All 1,000 pages of this monster.
Wow.
It's designed for 17-year-olds. Would you be surprised that I give that to a 10-year-old
Yeah, it's a big,
reading at the second grade level?
right, right.
Okay. You might say, why would I do that? Well, because for the most motivated kids, I just go for the end solution. Other ones will go through with 2 books or 3 books. You might start off at Harry Potter. But this particular girl, it's representative of a lot of students because I teach that biography a lot. Have you ever been to Disneyland or Disney World?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. Well, what's supposed to happen is you walk into the Magic Kingdom
Right.
or Disneyland, and it's Main Street, USA, and you're supposed to feel the Disney magic.
Yeah, yeah.
Disney magic is 2 universal themes. First one's easy to find. The second one, I've never had a parent find it. So what do I do when they walk in? This is the amount of work these kids are willing to put in. I took the girl, and she doesn't want her name used. I'm just going to call her Jen. And I said, Jen, I'm going to move you when you walk into the Magic Kingdom. That's Marceline. That's Marceline, Missouri, which it represents. That's where Walt was between 5 and 10. He spent the rest of his life trying to recreate that experience in his life. I said, you want to learn about the Disney magic? You got to start off there. And she's so excited. I said, yeah, you don't want to know the work I'm going to put you through. I want to know. Okay. So I sent her over to that section. It's 3,500 words written at the ninth, 10th grade level. She's 10, writing at the second grade level, reading at the second grade level. So I have her listen to the audiobook while following along her real book, trying to answer a specific question. What does Walt like? What does he not like? What does he dislike? What does he want to do? And then she's going through, if she finds a word she doesn't know, which is practically every word, I have her type out the word and then go to the Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. You cannot copy and paste. You can't copy and paste. She has to pick her definition and then retype it. How many times do you think you need to retype a word in a definition until you know it?
Probably 2 to 3 times on average.
Okay, maybe it's two, three, maybe it's five, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20. It's some number.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's some. They're going to be going through this chapter like this, like literally over 100 times to start. So she goes and she types out the word in the definition, and she does that for every word she doesn't know. And she finishes the section and she starts over, and we repeat the process. And parents I can hear right now, my child won't do that. I said, in the speciality, once they understand, they do. The motivation is extraordinary. For kids with ADD or ADHD, it's the same solution for dyslexics. They can't concentrate on anything else. You get them in their speciality, they are hyper focused the entire time. Okay. So, what happens? We go through that. And then what you're going to find is at the end of 2 years, and that's what it takes, she's reading this book.
Right.
How do I know she's reading this book? We come to the second universal theme. And in this case, her mom has a master's degree. And I said, what's the second universal theme? She said, I can't find it. As her 12-year-old daughter will do in these situations, she'll say, Mom, it's right there. And the mom goes, I can't believe I missed that. It's right there. I said, you have a master's degree, but in this instance, your 12-year-old dyslexic daughter can comprehend better than you can. Have I done my job? Now,
I,
that's a rather extreme example, but for
right.
highly motivated kids, highly intelligent, that's what we do. If you're talking to a more typical student, Reed was using X-Men um, graphic
Yeah.
novels
It's more
that
my
were age
style.
appropriate. Yeah, approved by his mom. I mean, that's just to give you an example. All right. I just want to illustrate just how effective that is. And we
Mhm.
have students go through that. Within 3 to 6 months, they're going to start developing a vocabulary list of dozens of evolved words. And then over time, hundreds of evolved words. That's how we jump up their reading level. Here's the key thing. If you're going to college, they're 10th through 11th grade, you're taking the PSAT or SAT or ACT or whatever. The verbal sections are essentially vocabulary tests. My kids who do this between 10 and 12, they remember 70 to 80% of the word definitions, of the definitions. They don't need to go memorize hundreds of evolved words. They've already done it. Drives their classmates crazy. What do you mean you're not studying these lists? I said, I did that 5 years ago. Eh? And they don't need it. It's that powerful. So basically, what I just showed you how to do, here's how we take care of beginning writing, and here's how we take care of the reading issue.
Yeah, and I can say that your brain and mine work different in the sense that my perspective on it, based on my questions, was how can we stop dyslexia, right? If we look at the brain and what's happening,
Mhm.
can we do something procedurally, medically, or something to shift the neural actions so that the dyslexic brain then acts like I don't, like a undyslexic brain, right? Now
Well,
your stuff is more practical, right? Hey, we have dyslexia. What can we do to work with it, right? So two very different approach styles. But that's why I was asking. I was curious about what research is out there and about it to see if people are trying to figure out. I don't want to say a cure for it, but you know what I mean. So and it seems like one of those things that maybe there is no cure. Like the only cure is working with you, right? Because maybe it's just something that if the brain is just designed a certain way and it can't be rewired or redesigned a different way, then you have to work with that.
okay. Now I'm going to show you our age differences because you look like a pretty young guy. How old are you?
23.
Okay. In 1999, you weren't even considered, right? You're just not even. That's when they solved that. The company is called Scientific Learning Corporation. It was a Dr. Temple from Cornell University. She was a young, newly minted PhD at the time. And what Scientific Learning Corporation did is they came out. I'm going to really oversimplify very complicated neuroscience. They went and they had students play a kind of an involved video game. Somewhere between 3 and 12 months, they got a 1 to 2 grade level increase in reading. Okay, very efficient at the time. And they've extended that work since then. And the back part of the brain, the reason why I'm mentioning Dr. Temple's work is the neural activity did increase quite substantially. Not quite like a normal brain, but quite an increase. Okay, now here in elementary school, 1 or 2 grade level increase matters. But I want you to imagine if you were a senior in high school wanting to go in the Navy and you're reading at the seventh grade level, now you're reading at the eighth grade level. Does it really matter?
I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's all about the scaling.
Right. Are they going to even let you near a nuclear sub if you can't read?
Right.
Yeah, you just forget about it. They just
Yeah.
won't. I mean, they
Yeah.
can't take the risk. So what my fundamental and that's generally you're going with exactly how the field's been going. Okay, but my field, I mean, I'm just showing my level of frustration here. Again, overcoming dyslexia. This first came out in 2003. Okay, I mean that was 22 years ago. So what I'm saying is I took the overactive part, and if I could get you to read this monster well, do you think you have the reading skills to go on a nuclear sub?
Right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's essentially, I'm just, I was looking to solve it from a very practical end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does the other side work? Absolutely. I just try to go. I went for what the biggest core problem is, which for dyslexia, a lot of people don't understand. Again, you ask a dyslexic or an ADD or ADHD kid, do you have ideas flying around your head in your speciality at light speed, key questionable with little to no organization? Yes, that's the problem. If you're dyslexic, I ask if you answer yes to that, and to really find if you're really dyslexic, I'll ask a second question. Fingers, keyboard. You have an idea that you want to write about. You want to type. You take your fingers, you put it on the keyboard, then the idea flies out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain.
Hmm.
That's a rather bad case of dyslexia. How are you going to write with an empty head? The researchers have no concept about this. Zero, because they haven't lived it. So mine was strictly how can we get this done as cheaply and as efficiently as possible?
Yeah.
Because what we're spending now and the results would make you sick.
Yeah. I get that. And so we're gonna have your website in the description below for people to check out. Just speaking of resources and costs. So what can people get from your website?
Well, if you go to my website, it's dyslexiaclasses.com. That's plural with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com. It's going to say download free report. So just click on that. And the document is the three reasons your child's having trouble in school and how to get past it. You answer a few questions. And then you can go and set up a free 30-minute interview with me where I speak to you and your dyslexic child, and they are so hard to convince. I ask them that question, do you have about the speciality? Do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organizations? They say, yes, how did you know? And they're like, thinking there's cameras around or something. I said, no,
Yeah.
I went through what you went through, and we discussed it a bit more. And then because they've gone through so much, nothing's worked. Every adult said, I can show you how to solve this, and it doesn't work. Or they find it really frustrating. And finally, I ask, is this how you'd like to overcome your concerns? Yeah. And then I talk to the parents. We work with parents on a yearly basis, and we make it affordable. And we're there on a webinar each week to answer questions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think it's like you said, that lived experience, that relatability is so important. And parents can be reading all the books and textbooks, but you have a way of connecting with them that just really sets that foundation for learning and education.
Well, when I started this at the assembly, I was your age. And now I finally figured this out about a year ago, everything. I mean, yeah, it just took everything. So yeah, it was a fun ride, but now we're finally ready to help parents so they don't have to go through the hell that I went through in school. And I'm going to make no mistake about it. It was hell. All right. There's just no need for it.
Right. Right. And I think the most important part too is setting it up so that these children are living, dare I say, relatively normal lives. They don't have to go to a school and feel isolated or outcasted from their peers, and they don't have to just because I think that's so important, especially nowadays. We have so much outcastment with our children, so much bullying. Obviously, it's been going on for a long time, but I think just minimizing that aspect so they can have a fulfilled and happy life. I mean, I think that's so important for us to do as parents and mentors to the best of our abilities.
Exactly. And just again, going back to Reed, if he went into public school after I talked to him in December, he would have went right into special ed with most of his classes. He would have been so frustrated because he's purpose for going to school. wasn't for the education, it was to be with his friends, and he wouldn't have been.
Right.
Now he's with his friends because his mom solved the problem in a little under 6 months.
Yeah. So again, that website in the description below, I encourage you to check it out. And just for all of those who don't have a child with dyslexia, don't know someone, but you plan on having children in the future, just keep this in the back of your mind in case you know, your child is having struggles with dyslexia, and you say, I remember there was that one expert on that podcast, and he had like the method to take care of this. So I encourage you all to check it out, save it somewhere if you want. But Mr. Van Brocklen, so great to have you here. I really appreciate what you do, serving, a niche audience, committing your life to serving small but meaningful, important population. I really respect that, and I want to thank you for your time today as well.
Thanks for having me.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.